Welcome everybody to another episode of the Holistic Fat Loss and Fitness Podcast. Every session, we're about helping our clients and members live better, longer with their real life scenarios. So Viv, what's your question? How can I help you today?
Well, I was thinking about protein, fats and carbs, the macro level. What is a general rule? I don't want to go overboard because I'm not gymming for a lot of muscular because I'm sort of semi-rehabbing. I know my daughter, who's heavily into gym work, is paranoid about her protein levels and pretty extreme. So then I look at myself and think, I haven't even had 50 grams today. So, yeah. That's the question.
Perfect. Great question. Let's dive straight in. The general rule of thumb, and let's just go through some basic guidelines. And for those listening, the macronutrients, the three big heavy hitters, protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Let's talk percentages first. General health looks a little bit like this. 30% for your protein, about 25 to 30% for your fats, and 40 to 45% for your carbohydrates. If you're falling in those percentages, and that is the percentage of your diet that each of those macronutrients are making up, that'll put you in good general health. What does that look like in terms of different circumstances? Well, you can actually increase your protein. And I will say this, most times when we look and measure where somebody's protein at, it's severely under. So if we're looking for 30% as our marker, most times when I track with people, it's 15%. If they are vegan and vegetarian, it's normally around 10% or under. So there are big discrepancies there from where we want them to be. Without that, well, the other thing I should say is normally their carbohydrate content is significantly higher. One, because they've reduced their protein intake. So you've got to replace the sort of energy and the hunger with something. We want that protein to, the carbohydrates to sit between 40, 45, maybe 50% tops. When I track with people, I consistently see 60, 70, 75%, which is just way too high for your carbohydrate intake. And I would say for people that quote unquote tell me that they eat healthy, at least their food or the quality of their food is quite healthy, the biggest thing that they actually overeat is their fat component. So instead of it sitting, somewhere between mid 20s to 30%, it often creeps up to 40 to 50% because you can definitely eat too much of a good thing. Think olive oils, think, meats, think avocados here. All really fat dense. To get more specific for you, Viv, let's break it down into sort of some grams, especially for protein. I find that protein is the best macronutrient to start with because it has the best bang for buck effect on your all-round health and it changes people's eating habits the most. So if we can, the standard guidelines actually go from 0.8 of a gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. I think that's too low, if I'm being honest. I think for all-round good and optimal health, I think people need to sit somewhere between 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight, all the way through to 2.2 up to 2.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, depending on how active they are, depending on how much muscle they're trying to build, depending on how much resistance exercise they have, depending on the stress levels in life/in their body. These are all really important circumstances to take into account when we're looking at somebody's macronutrient profile. The more you're exercising, the more muscle you're looking to build, the more resistance training you're doing, the more stressful your life is, the less you're sleeping, the more protein you'll significantly need. The first 50% of the protein that you consume in your diet will go straight towards immune function. So if you're not eating adequate amounts, simply put, like your body just doesn't have enough of the building blocks to warrant things like fat burning and muscle building when it doesn't have enough to even support the immune system, which is much more important to your survival than our body composition goals. The other thing you'll get from eating enough adequate protein, so that 1.6 to 2.2, 2.4, is you'll get a big metabolic boost, which is really important. It keeps you fuller for longer in the stomach, which is really important. It means you tend to overeat less. It means you tend to actually eat less calories throughout the day because your actual satiety levels are kept in check and your hunger hormones are kept in check, which normally reduces binge eating or sweets in the afternoon/evening. Big benefit. You'll get a lowered systemic cortisol response in the body from this as well, which means you'll get much better sleep on the back of that. What does that actually look like as a tangible thing? It's like, I want protein in every meal. Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. I'd take 20 grams in a meal, but I would prefer it to be between 30 and 40. To put it into perspective for people, an egg has about 7 to 9 grams per egg, full egg.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. They're the figures I've been working on, about 100 grams for my weight, and
Yep.
Sort of it sits in with what you're saying as well as the other macros. Well, I'm just struggling because I intermittently fast, so I don't eat until 1 o'clock onwards.
Yes.
So I've just got to make a concerted effort. And then also talking to Anthony, I don't process protein extremely well. So we have that issue as well. But look, that's great. Really appreciate it. It's a bit of a wake-up call.
Not a problem. How can I help you, Vince?
So my question is a follow-up from last week. So last week, I can't remember who it was, so someone brought up creatine. And as someone who has never taken creatine, it is of interest to me. I have read about it, and everything you read about it, it's, boosts physical performance, and you get these amazing cognitive effects, and there's no risk to it, and all this sort of stuff, which would mean it's so good. Why isn't everyone taking it, I guess? So I guess my follow-up questions are, who would benefit from taking creatine, and who obviously then would not benefit from it? In what situations you would use it? Like, is it a constant thing, or do you take it more during injury or less during injury or recovery, and how you use it with protein and other foods, I guess? We talked about I know this is long-winded. I can break it down. I'm happy you to break it down. But we talked about the different types of creatine, but the way to actually take it, I think you said about starting slow and working your way in and use the monohydrate early and then HCl later. I just want to clarify that. And I guess the last thing would be, are there any do's and don'ts when it comes to incorporating creatine into your diet?
Okay, good questions we'll go with. Thank you for that.
Answer as many as you can be bothered.
No, good. Deep dive. Let's tackle what we can. It's a really important topic. Creatine gets brought up every other day in the gym world. It's one of the most widely taken and researched supplements that there is out there. So the data on it's pretty good. Let's start with how creatine actually works so that people can get an understanding as to, why they would even take it in the first place. And if you can understand that about your supplements, that is a good place to be. It allows you to put you in the driving seat to figure out, what is this thing even doing in my body? Creatine itself plays a really key role in ATP production. That's adenosine triphosphate. This is the primary energy source for your muscle contractions, but it also helps with, brain function and recovery. So it has a big role in the ATP PCR energy system. So the phosphocreatine system. ATP is the energy currency of your cells. I want you to think about that. Like, they live and die by how much ATP there is. So when you perform things like high intensity exercise, strength training, running, your body rapidly depletes your ATP, the amount that there is. What we're trying to do with creatine is actually replenish the stores of phosphocreatine in the body, which then helps recycle the ATP every time it's broken. So you think every time you have ATP, so adenosine, and then 3-triphosphate is the actual molecule. As you break down one of the triphosphates, it becomes a diphosphate. And it's that break in the bonds that creates the energy. Creatine allows for the now DP or diphosphate to then get restored to a triphosphate again quicker. So it just helps that recycling process, which is how you get a lot of the benefits. So this is why creatine's, best used in sort of resistance or high energy based activities, or touted in high energy based activities, I should say. Who benefits from creatine is probably the next best place to go. Anything to do with strength training and muscle growth, or endurance and athletic performance. I'd say they're widely the biggest reasons people would supplement a creatine supplement. Let's start with strength training and muscle growth. So your muscle contractions, like how hard your muscles can contract, or if they can contract at all, depends on this ATP availability. So by boosting the amount of ATP you can regenerate and recycle through creatine, it does a couple of things. It should increase your muscular power output. It should delay the amount of muscle fatigue, and it should allow you to enhance your training volume. So think more reps and more growth. It should also increase your muscle cell hydration, which that alone will then put it in an environment where you can get more protein synthesis for your muscle repair. For endurance and athletic performance, which would be the other big pillar, this relies on your body's aerobic system. So it's a different system than the ATP-PC system, but it still benefits you in this system. So it enhances anything to do with like sprinting, performance and power outputs, but anything that delays your neuromuscular fatigue, which is huge in the endurance component, or anything that has repeated athletic performance things that you need to do. Think sprinting in AFL or soccer or, rugby, any of those things that consistent all the time, but do require immediate bursts over longer durations, like a couple of hours. And it has a real role in supporting hydration and electrolyte balance. So I want you to think creatine itself actually helps buffer hydrogen ion accumulation. And this is the feeling you're feeling when your muscles start to burn with the lactic acid. So it reduces the amount of acidity and then therefore delays the amount of fatigue in the muscle. So that's kind of how it's helping from an endurance point of view. From an optimal health lens or longevity, it's amazing for brain function and cognitive benefits. So the brain is so demanding. It's really an energy hog. I want you to think it's so much more important than anything else going on in the body. So your body just prioritizes your brain. So it enhances things like memory recall. It's been shown to improve focus, creatine. It's been helping with cognitive processing because it actually has a really important role to do with the neurons that are firing in your brain. There's some evidence that it helps with neuroprotection against things like oxidative stress, which is really amazing. And it's supposed to help with mental resilience. So it helps your brain function more optimally under, less sleep and higher stress scenarios. Has a big role in injury and prevention and muscle recovery. So it has a really important role in helping reduce a process called catabolism, which is just anything breaking down, especially in the muscle breaking down. It has a role to play in minimizing inflammation, and it enhances tissue recovery. So there is some evidence out there that creatine can help activate something called your satellite cells, and those cells are really crucial in muscle repair and regeneration of things after an injury. Let's dive into who shouldn't take it. That's everyone that should, or potential processes that would benefit creatine. But there are some things where I don't think creatine is a very good option. Anybody that has kidney problems or long-term kidney disease, not great. Creatine is actually metabolized into something called creatinine. Tough thing to get into, but it's actually excreted by the kidneys. So individuals with healthy kidneys, it's widely touted as not being a problem, considering how many people take it on a day-to-day basis. But if you do have kidney issues at all, either just don't take it or go and see a doctor first. Those who are chronically dehydrated, this is not a good idea either. Creatine actually pulls water into the muscle cells. So one of the potential cons that people say is that they feel bloated or their muscles look a bit swollen, so to speak, and a bit puffy. It's the fact that it pulls all the water into the muscle cells. So if you're already dehydrated and you're getting this creatine pulling water into the muscle cells, it may cause cramping and some dizziness, and it just won't make you feel very good. The other thing that I don't think people should do with it is if you're just expecting quick fixes. You see this with a lot of supplementation. It's it does a pretty amazing job, creatine, and it does have some real benefits, and the data is pretty clear, but you still have to work at it. So it's not going to improve your performance. It's not going to make you stronger just on its own. You still need the accompanying training regimen and a pretty good holistic program to see the benefit of it. So this is the icing on top of your program, not the cake itself, so to speak. The other one I would say is if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, specifically pregnant, the data is pretty unclear and there's nowhere near enough research, and that's almost on most things to do with pregnancy. So I always like to go on the side of caution and say, if you are, I just wouldn't. It's much easier that way. But if you do want to, then you just go and see a practitioner who specializes in that, think your GP, think your obstetrician, and they can give you some more specific advice in that realm. When to use it. So it often gets, well, it used to a lot. There used to be a stage where people would do, a real loading phase, and they would have 10 to 20 grams of creatine every day to quote unquote saturate the muscles faster. I find it's unnecessary to do so unless you are a professional athlete looking to get the quickest possible results. I find that honestly, 2 to 5 grams is more than enough for most general people for all round health, well-being, and all the benefits that we've talked about. And your muscles will saturate pretty quickly anyway. It's an everyday sort of supplement because your body doesn't store it past saturation. So it means you'll have to continually top yourself up to have the readily available creatine stored in the muscles. But 2 to 5 grams should be more than enough. You should saturate within, a couple of weeks anyway. It does have the con of causing digestive issues. That is where you said, Vince, a creatine monohydrate is where most people start, tends to work really well. I would slow dose my way up on the creatine, start at 1 gram, do that for a couple of days or a week, go to 2 grams plus, and just make your way up to about 5 grams. That way it'll give your digestive system a chance to absorb it with the least amount of negative consequences in terms of upsetting your GI tract. If you're still finding that you're getting an upset GI system, move to a HCl creatine. It just enhances the absorption and the bioavailability of the creatine, and you'll get less effects. The time of day doesn't tend to matter. It does absorb better through insulin response. So normally it means have it with some carbohydrates is really standard procedure. I like to just have it in my intra-workout shake. So I'm a big fan of habit stacking when it comes to supplementation. Otherwise, people just forget. So whenever I've got a supplement, I'll have a specific task that I'm doing in the day that is an everyday task, and I'll put whatever the supplement is into that everyday task to severely increase my chances of me actually doing the thing. For creatine, it just goes in my workout shake. I'm using it mainly for workout and performance for that particular thing. And in that thing, I'll chuck it in with, some essential amino acids. I might even have, a little carbohydrate mix in there if I feel like it. And you could, have a little pre-carbohydrate snack before you train, and you're going to get all the benefits of absorbing that creatine. And if you're working out, it makes it pretty easy. So let's talk through some quick do's and don'ts. Take it daily. It takes time for your muscles to saturate. Drink enough water. You want to drink between 2 and 3 liters of water a day if you're having your creatine. You should anyway, but specifically with creatine. Pair it with resistance training for maximum benefit, and you can normally use it as a habit stacker. You could do it on a walk. You could do it after a run. Doesn't matter. Exercise is really good. And then take it with carbohydrates for better absorption. The creatine uptake is much better with an insulin response. Don't take too much more than the 5 grams. You don't get much benefit. You're oversaturated and you'll get way more GI upsets. Don't expect overnight results. It's not a miracle supplement, and don't use as a protein powder replacement. They're not the same.
Perfect. Thanks.
Any other questions on that, Vince, or does that hit the mark for you?
The only other thing you say like start at 1, build up to 5. If you were to build up to 5, are you better off breaking up that 5 through the day if possible? Like if you're going to habit stack it, would you be better off breaking that 5 up into say 2 or 3 portions, or just do it all in one portion?
If you're going to build up to it, it doesn't particularly matter for most people. So if one week you start at 1 and the next week it's 2 and the next week it's 3, you'll get the adaptation anyway. If you were going to split it up, yeah, sure. You could have an earlier shake in the morning or just an earlier drink with it with, 2 or 3 grams, and you could have another 2 or 3 grams later in the day, and that'd be totally fine too. It's more just total grammage of creatine over a daily cycle to saturate the muscles, which is important.
Is it going to have a better GI response if you break it up or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Like honestly, it depends on the person. Like if you're not getting GI upsets, you'll be fine. Like it's not actually going to make any difference. If you're getting a small GI upset, then yeah, you possibly could just actually split it up, because then you're not getting as big a hit. But I'd change the creatine that you're on first and see if that has a better hit, and then you can split that one up if needed.
I might give it a shot then. You've convinced me.
I would say this. Let me finish with this, Vince. It's not essential. Like you can stay in really good health without taking any sort of protein powders and any creatine, right? They're widely touted and they do have some really easy benefits. But for most people, I wouldn't even consider starting them on it. It's just not a heavy hitter in terms of bang for buck health outcomes for most people. Like there's a whole bunch that we can, if you're not walking, sleeping well, eating enough protein, eating regularly, doing some resistance training, it's like eating whole foods. It's like, cool. Those 6 alone will give you astronomical benefit. Like 80% of your health can be built off those. This would be, and I know where you're at, which is advanced. This could potentially be good for you, but I just don't start people on it. They think it's
to be honest, I'm more interested in the cognitive side, to be honest. I'd be interested to see how that goes. I will track it. I'll journal it.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks.
Not a problem, mate. Not a problem.
Can I just add to that? Just for someone like myself, I heard you say about memory loss and energy and cognition. I mean, would it be worth someone like me taking it? I don't really need it for the other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would also say this, for anybody that's, 45 and above, where, things like cognition and definitely like decision fatigue in the brain start to kick in, absolutely it could be a real game changer for somebody's focus, alertness, brain function. But again, it won't replace a good quality sleep regimen. Mm-hmm. Nothing does. But accompanying that in a good restorative practice, it could be a real benefit to keeping the brain functioning well.
And what dosage would you start on? Small?
Same thing, yeah. 1 gram, 1 or 2 grams, work your way up each week, give your digestive system a chance to support it. You could probably go from honestly, a week of 2 grams into a week of 4 grams into, 5 grams. I think you'll find you get pretty good benefit from it, Viv.
Is that a day or a week? A gram a day?
Every day, yep.
Thank you.
Perfect. Got a couple of questions here in the chat. One from Kat here. What's the best for reducing body fat, specifically around the torso? Really good question. It's a multifaceted answer, Kat. Mainly speaking, torso fat comes from a stress response and a high cortisol, the stress hormone, systemic cortisol being high regularly. The other one is any form of insulin resistance. So you'll get cortisol sort of around the belly button. You'll get insulin around the love handles. Both can be attributed to stress though, and it's pretty simple. So we want want to do training, nutrition, and everything to support how stressed or systemically stressed the body is under by minimizing how high somebody's cortisol goes often. Couple of things that we can do with that. Number one is have a training, and it could be walking would be my first step. Make sure you hit a lot of low intensity exercise. Walking just tends to be the best for the joints, easy to implement. You can do it anytime, anywhere, and it's a severely underrated health tool, let alone weight loss tool and body fat burning tool. It does not elevate your cortisol a lot. If you can, aim for 10,000 steps. If you really want to accelerate your fat burning by going to 12 to 15,000, you'll find really marketed fat loss results from that. Resistance training. You need to do 2 to 3, preferably 3 full body strength training sessions a week. In those sessions, you want to keep those to about somewhere between a 5, no more than a 7 out of 10 intensity level, where you leave the gym feeling good, you can still talk, and you feel energized within the next 60 minutes of leaving the gym. That's a good intensity. Frequency trumps intensity, especially around burning fat on the midsection, because what you don't want to do when you leave crawling the gym, not being able to walk the next day, you shoot your cortisol up really high. And when you have a really high cortisol response, it has a really long tail, which means it takes a long time to unwind again. And when it's high, you downregulate 2 things specifically. 1, building muscle, and 2, your body's ability to burn fat, and it hinders your sleep. And sleep is the biggest one for getting both of those benefits. The other thing I would do is nutritionally, we make sure we're not getting a really high blood sugar rise all the time, and that's where the insulin kicks in. This touches on what Viv said before. You want to have protein in every single meal. Minimum 20, but between 30 and 40 would be grams, I should say, would be the optimal per meal. You want to have a small amount of fat in those meals, especially breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Proteins and fats slow down your body's insulin response. So it means it won't go so high, which means you don't get quite the crash. And when you don't get the crash, it means you don't get the big cortisol spike that comes on the back of that. Then you just want to be strategic about your carbohydrates. There's a thing called smart carbohydrates. We're talking things like quinoa. We're talking like things like pumpkin. You're talking things like Swedes. They're all really great starchy carbohydrates. Low impact on your cortisol, low insulin response, but they keep you really full. So by the time you eat protein, by the time you add fat, and by the time you have a smart carbohydrate in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to have low cortisol throughout the day. You're going to metabolically stimulate yourself a lot, and you're not going to have a big insulin response, which means your body consistently stays in fat burning mode and muscle building mode. Then you normally get a better sleep when you've had a nutritional profile like that. In terms of the quality of your food, we're thinking, minimum 70, but 80 plus is kind of the gold standard of whole foods to 20% not whole foods, which is, normally the funner foods and the slightly packaged foods. If you can get that balance right, you'll see significant results because they're not consistently stimulating that cortisol response. The other thing is get your sleep. You need good quality, deep sleep, in bed by sort of 9:30, 10. You want, 7 to 8.5 hours. The better the quality of the sleep, the better you recover. Most of the fat burning and the muscle building doesn't happen in the daytime hours while we're awake. It happens in the time where we're sleeping, when our body's actually resetting. So that's where the fat burning and the muscle building stimulus is actually taken from that into an adaptation. Good follow-up. Kat's just saying, is it 10,000 steps in one walk or overall in one day? It doesn't matter. I'd actually preface it across the day. My general rule of thumb is any type of walking is good walking. Where you can fit it in always trumps the optimal for me. Once you're fitting it in, then we can actually look at making it more efficient. 10,000 steps will put a little bit of stress on the body. It's a fair amount of steps to get through in one walk. I tend to try to fit in adaptation through my work. So it's like, when could I add it in? Is there walking phone calls I can take? Can I do a small walk in the morning? Can I walk after certain meals? Not only does it increase digestion and decrease your blood sugar after meals, for 10 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day, there's another 3 to 3,500 steps that you've done on something that is much better than just kind of sitting at your computer. And then a small afternoon walk would be preferential. If you can do all of those, you'll find that you're pretty close to hitting 10 anyway. Start with what you've got. If it's like 4,000 in the day and you end up at 6, that's a really good movement in terms of how much walking you're doing. Then we can try to make it 8, then we can try to make it 10. And once you're hitting 10, you'll find that you've integrated into your life pretty successfully. All right, that might be all we have time for today, team. Again, thanks for joining me. I really hope you've taken something away from today. And I hope you've sort of made the realization that, honestly, with a lot of what we talk about, it's not the knowledge. Like, the knowledge just isn't enough for most people. People need implementation with all the deep health of their life: family, partner, kids, work, social life, family life. There's lots of different components that make up your health, and trying to get your physical movement and your self-care, recovery, and your nutrition to integrate into those lives. That's the hard part. So if anyone's listening and you're sort of sick of being stuck, or you'd love to learn how to integrate, would love to hear from you. The link's in my bio @TheSammyRoberts, and I look forward to chatting to you. Until next time, keep living better.